Hi guys, so Britain has finally agreed to rejoin Horizon Europe, the massive scientific programme, which will mean British and European scientists, academics and researchers from universities and organisations across the continent working together in areas such as bioscience, AI and battery technology. And as we've seen, certain Brexiteers are foaming at the mouth over the idea. However, one in particular, Ben Habib, had probably the worst take possible of the negative consequences for Brexiteers. Have a listen to this.
So what we will be doing in this country is paying money into the EU effectively for the promotion and creation of an EU army, which will no doubt also be used to try and capture the British army.
What? Okay, let's take a step back. Remember, this is Ben Habib, so take a deep breath. So the funding from the UK government into the EU to have access to the Horizon programme is a secret plan to fund an EU army. And in some way the EU army is going to capture the British army. What on the battlefield? Are we talking about a war between Europe and Britain? Or is he talking about the UK army British army being absorbed in some way by the EU army? How would that happen? The UK isn't a member of the European Union. Or if he's talking about, well, maybe if Europe goes to war with some nation, don't see that happening, but let's say for the sake of argument, the European Union goes to war with some country in Africa, the UK will have to commit troops. Well, it won't, unless Parliament decides to commit troops. None of this makes any sense, but then this is Ben Habib.
And I find that offensive. I find the whole Horizon Europe thing, frankly, a step back into the EU, a diminishing of British scientific interest. But
How? How does this diminish scientific interest in Britain? How has being part of a bigger organisation, having access to research labs in Europe, having access to researchers in Europe, how is that bad for Britain? This is about exchanging ideas, exchanging personnel, people, expertise and experts. How is this bad for Britain? Like, unless you're expecting the Tories to invest huge amounts of money in resource and in research and development or in science instead of doing this. But then even if the UK government was to invest 10 times as much as they're investing into Horizon, they still wouldn't have access to the resources available in Europe. And in some cases outside Europe, because there are other countries which are part of Horizon too that are not part of the EU.
I find the European Defence Fund absolutely, an affront to Brexit, an affront to those of us who voted to leave the European Union. We want nothing to do with the European army.
And it seems yet again, Ben, we're dancing to Europe's tune, the EU's tune. The fact is that I don't think the politicians here understand what is in this deal, as you've so articulately explained. I don't think the politicians know what's going on. I certainly don't think the public understand this.
No, they don't. It's been sold as a collaborative scientific programme across Europe for the greater good of all participants. And that's not what it is. It is the promotion of EU policies.
I thought nobody knew what it contained. I thought nobody knew what it was about. Politicians in Britain don't know. Diplomats in Britain don't know. The public in Britain don't know. But Ben Habib knows. Like, what sort of connections does Ben Habib have where he knows more about this Horizon programme and Britain's commitment to it than the Prime Minister? That's strange, isn't it?
And that's where it goes wrong. But that's the EU. Everything the EU does is fundamentally based on taking money from member states. In this case, it also includes the United Kingdom, choosing how it distributes that money and having the ability, therefore, to influence how that money is spent and what is done with it. And, that's the heart of the European Union project. Wealth redistribution with a political aim.
No, it's not with a political aim, unless that political aim is to raise all boats. So Ben is somewhat right here when he talks about, well, of course, Ben Habib, being a right-winger, has a problem with redistribution. But this is part of the European ethos, is what we do is we take money from rich countries and we distribute it to poorer countries in order to improve their economies. Ireland is a perfect example of that. Ireland in the 1970s, 1980s, an extremely poor country. And thanks to being a member of the European Union and having access to structural funds and a huge amount of cash being pumped into the island, both north and south, Ireland benefited from that. Now Ireland is a net contributor, which is the way things should be. Ireland's economy is doing really well. Now it's helping out other member states. The only people who have a problem with that are right-wingers. People who believe, well, we should actually, if I'm rich, I should just keep my money to myself. I don't want to help people out. And you can apply this to just, beyond economics, to social policies. Ben Habib and right-wing parties like his are against, a social safety net. They're against using public money to help the NHS. They want it privatized. So that's why, in a sense, they're against the EU, because the EU is about helping, quote-unquote, poorer people. They're completely against that. They want the rich to survive and prosper, and everyone else just to struggle and die. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.